FEMA has fired one of its supervisors after it was discovered that in the wake of Hurricane Milton last month, she apparently instructed relief workers going door to door in Florida to skip the homes of Trump supporters. It is outrageous and on the surface would seem to validate concerns from those on the right who accuse the agency of punishing Republicans by withholding aid in the aftermath of Hurricanes Helene and Milton. Up to this point, there was really nothing concrete to back that up. And it's a story that sort of got buried over the weekend with everything else going on. The Daily Wire broke it, reporting that at least 20 homes with Trump signs or flags were skipped from the end of October and into November due to the guidance. This happened in and around Lake Placid, Florida, where a tornado touched down in the days leading up to Milton, making landfall, and which saw wind and flood damage following the storm. 20 families, at least, apparently didn't get the help they may have needed from the very agency whose job it is to help them when disaster strikes, because they displayed public indicators of their political affiliation. That is horrifying. Now, when I first heard about it and noticed there wasn't much media coverage of it, in particular on a major website that I own called Mediaite, I reached out to my own site and pitched them and said, hey, why are we not covering this more? Particularly when FEMA confirmed the report, seemingly validating fears we saw take hold in North Carolina, for example, following incredible damage caused by flooding from Helene. People who lost everything were afraid or unwilling to ask for help because of distrust of FEMA. I'm reminded of a caller from my radio show on Sirius XM whose father-in-law was so distrustful of the feds, he said he'd rather go without eating than get help from them.
And it's hard to even imagine it. I mean, he lost almost everything, and he's refusing all help from the federal government and complaining to us that he doesn't have food, that he doesn't have the stuff he needs, and yet he won't accept the help. What the hell are we supposed to do? We're not in a position to be able to fly across the country and help him. Yeah. There's people begging us to get him to accept help, and he won't do it. And I guarantee you I'm not the only one. I guarantee you I'm not the only one.
And that's exactly why we need to report on this stuff when it actually does happen. So we can also debunk the false rumors and false accusations, as we did in North Carolina. But let's also remember, FEMA got rid of this person pretty quickly. There's nothing at this point to indicate her guidance came from above. The supervisor, Marnie Washington, is also now under investigation by FEMA's Office of Special Counsel, the House Oversight Committee, and Florida Governor Ron DeSantis also launching their own investigations. By the way, kudos to the FEMA workers who blew the whistle. Look, you can have bad apples that can give an entire agency a bad name, but let's bring back Democratic Congressman Jared Moskowitz, a member of the House Oversight Committee, who also served as Director of Emergency Management under Governor DeSantis. Congressman, do you know anything more about how this happened?
No, we don't have any more details. Obviously, Oversight's going to launch an investigation. I support that investigation. As someone who was the former Director of Emergency Management in Florida, a Democrat in a Republican administration, one of the things that is sacrosanct in the emergency management industry is to stay nonpartisan, apartisan. Disasters don't affect Democrats or Republicans. They don't hit MAGA or progressives. They hit neighborhoods. They hit communities. They hit all people. And this sort of stuff feeds into the worst things that people think about government in general. And while we're entering the most partisan times, the most divided times, people have lost faith in their institutions, FEMA needs to stay out of that. They have to stay out of that. Watching colleagues of mine, using misinformation, talking about weather machines, trying to make FEMA partisan. We cannot allow disasters and disaster response to become partisan. We have to fight to keep it nonpartisan. So we should call it out when it happens on both sides to make sure that we're telling the truth. And it was important in North Carolina to do that, and it's just as important to do here. What happened in Florida is unacceptable. We could not have Americans not getting care based on their political affiliation.
Congressman, the supervisor, Washington, spoke to the Washington Examiner, actually, and she says she let her supervisors know specific streets we could not do because of hostile political encounters. And according to communications obtained by the Examiner, she was encouraged and supported in her decision to avoid certain streets to, quote, keep them safe. FEMA workers, quote, were having their lives threatened. And then the report goes on to say several of these hostile encounters are documented in the media. But the supervisor, Washington, is demanding FEMA turn over incident reports showing additional hostilities that resulted in her having to avoid certain streets. What do you make of that?
We'll have to see the evidence, okay, of that, if there were individual hostilities, and that should have been reported. But, my guess is that, one person maybe being hostile doesn't mean all of a sudden you generalize and start skipping houses. It also means that if they were having individual hostilities, they still should have figured out to make sure that that person was aware and got all of the benefits that they were due. There's a way to handle that. And so this instance, the way it went down, I applaud the administrator for firing the person immediately. That was the right decision. But now the FEMA needs to comply with the investigation and oversight, because we got to make sure that this doesn't now go into the Trump administration. We can't have whoever becomes the FEMA administrator there, or low-level people there, thinking that they're going to skip Democratic homes. We got to make sure we get rid of that at all levels.
Yep. All right, Congressman Moskowitz, thanks a lot for taking all the time with us tonight. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Dan. Appreciate it.
Thanks for watching. Go to joinnn.com to find NewsNation on your screen. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.